Hi, it's Doug Hugerborst. I am here to discuss Tradeparency today on an introductory webinar to explain to you our pricing, promotions, and invoicing and planning system for the alcohol beverage industry. My hope is that this will take about 15 minutes and give you the high points of what we're trying to accomplish from a problem, solution, benefit perspective. And then also a chance to see a little bit of it, and perhaps that's enough to whet your interest and have you take a deeper dive at some point. Of course, we'll also take questions at the end, but again, this is going to be structured as problem, solution, benefit. So we have a couple of PowerPoint slides, but most of it's going to be demo. Just very quickly about business impact. We are a company that owns Tradeparency. And we got started back in 2005 doing business intelligence, and we continued to do that. We've worked with the winery industry from our outset, and we work in BI. What that means is dashboarding, reporting, analysis, trending, helping with forecasts, helping with analytics. We also work in other industries outside the wine industry, which also helped us as we helped build out Tradeparency, and you'll see some of that as we talk through it here going forward. Following a problem, solution, benefit sort of outline, we'll talk about some of our problems that we've faced with Tradeparency or trying to face in that area of your business. We'll go into showing you the solution, and we'll talk about some benefits to summarize. The very first thing that people struggle with, or we've seen people struggle with in the alcohol beverage industry, have been price grids. Everyone's got sort of a slightly different format, but the idea is what are the prices that the supplier sells through the distributor at that the distributor is going to ask for support for. Sometimes those are called depletion allowances, sometimes they're called billbacks or chargebacks. The price grid philosophy of keeping everything in Excel has so many headaches, from version control to the fact that you have a difficult time reporting. Hey, let me see all the prices where I'm giving up 20 bucks a case. If you wanted to do that, and you've got 10 products and you've got 50 distributors, you got to go through 500 worksheets just to get to that. That's an awful lot of work, and on top of that, when people are out there in the business making new business all the time, keeping that up and keeping it organized so everyone has access to it is just so problematic. It often leads to an us versus them with finance and sales. Finance trying to keep up with the deals that sales has made. Sales saying, hey, why are you checking in on us all the time, because we're supposed to be doing the selling. Just the need to trade data turns it into a almost adversarial at times situation. And of course, as you go through Excel, there is no sort of approval process. There is no workflow that's required in there. That brings us to the question, how much am I spending by the glass? And really the question that drove the creation of Tradeparency. We were working as business intelligence consultants for one of our clients, and the IT director there got asked this question, and he said, well, finance knows, and finance says, no, we don't know. We just know how much money got spent. We don't have any of that detail. And so the beginning of Tradeparency began as, how do we collect the information needed, and what's the processes, and how do we make it worth doing? Because obviously a process that's too expensive to do for the benefit they get out of it, not worth it. So Tradeparency is designed around doing the same amount of work to get much richer, deeper data. In order to, at the bottom here, we get visibility to total spend. And this is, I think, an area that is underrated when it comes to Tradeparency. So many people focus on DAs and billbacks, but there's so much more money spent out there, whether it's in samples or menu printing or other kinds of advertising or such like that. And so capturing all of that spend is critical. We were talking to a larger winery, and they said, man, this is really impressive how you do that. So we're going to touch base on how all of these problems are addressed, because we're going to go straight to the demo now. And we'll start here in Tradeparency. So when you log into Tradeparency, what you'll see here is that we've captured all the pricing for every distributor every distributor, all 100%, not just the ones that send prices, but all your distributors. Each deal, as you drill into it, you're capturing, your list prices, your FOB, your price to retailer. You're able to calculate out your margins, and this works very similarly to what's in your grid. And so your grid might look something like this. And people have worked, and this is normally a sheet per distributor per product, and you have your different prices, and it works vertically. And we've managed to put it into a centralized database here online. It's also available on your phone or your iPad or your tablet or your Android device. We can pulse the dates, so if you have a particular deal that you're only doing it for, every so often, we can do that. We also have the ability to mark things with what are called deal types for reporting later. If it's a buy the glass program, hey, that came up earlier, didn't it? We wanted to know how much we're spending by the glass. If this was a buy the glass deal, we would check that. In this case, we might have a 5-case deal or some kind of closeout in the situation. But the deals go in, and so it becomes a pricing repository. Now, one of the things that's important about a pricing repository is not only being able to have the pricing here for sales and finance to get to simultaneously, one version of the truth, but also how do you get adoption? And how do you make sure that that pricing repository is also shared properly with the distributor? Because obviously that's a really important part of how Tradeparency works. And so as we do that, what we want to do is want to make the work process as similar to where it has been in the past. So while we want to centralize and keep this data in a database, we also want to be able to make sure that we are able to get it back out and have it usable. And I'll pick, I think we have the most deals under our fictitious King bond here. And we'll turn it into a spreadsheet. And so now if the sales rep in the field wants to take that data and go out back to their distributor, they're able to work in the same manner. They can still see the gross profits, margins and such like that. They can still see their deals, one per sheet. But now they're getting to work the same way, but we're getting the benefit of having all the pricing in one place and version control is managed and such. So that handles some of the pricing repository parts of things. Now, the pricing part is really just one portion of this. And as we've looked at other folks with different solutions, they focused on where do we put our prices in, how do we keep our prices in line with distributors and make sure that they're all up to date all the time. And a big reason for that is because that as support material comes back, as bills from the distributor come in saying, hey, you owe us X amount of money, and I spent 14 cases at $10 and I had 5 cases at $20 and all that. There's supposed to be a check and a balance. And right now that's all done offline in Excel or on some printed paper where someone scratched stuff out and all that. But Tradeparency allows us to actually go to the next step, which is to actually process invoices and capture some of the spend. Now, one of the keys here is that it's also going to help us align the spend with the time that it occurred, because one of the issues that you face is that if you look in your accounting system and you get a bill here in March, it might be for December, it might be for January or February, and they may not have those months open. So we want to be able to keep everything aligned with that. So here I am in March. I might go and put in an invoice, 555, today's date. Depending on my process, I might pay them with a check, or I might write them a credit memo because they're deducting. And let's say it's $1,000. Not too bad this month. I can attach the actual document, whether it's a PDF or Excel or whatever they've sent it in, and I can go on. But the key here is that now that I have my deals in, I can actually go through that bill and I can read off and say, I see I've got 2 cases here. I'm using keyboard here, so wow, I used a lot of 90 cases. Man, I always thought BOGO was supposed to, or buy the glass was going to be, not that much of my deal. So 20 cases here, and I'm starting to add up. You'll notice it's giving a running total as I'm going, but one of the other problems we had was how do I have visibility not just to my depletion allowances, but to my other expenses? So as I put in another expense, I can create this list of other areas that I might spend money in. whether it's samples or dinners or printing, marketing fees. In this case, they're going to charge us $90. And you'll notice as I do this, I can mark whether I'm required to capture the brand or the brand and varietal, so that later on when I'm trying to figure out my net margin per brand or my net margin per wine, I have all that level of detail. So I might put it into the Life Winery and co-op for auction printing on something. Now I also get a workflow, and this is really important because as we try to work through the process of billbacks or any kind of promotional spend, it goes back and forth between accounting and the sales managers over and over. How do I save it in a place that I know they're going to go to? How do I put it into the right place in the workflow? Here, accounting might have put this in. I now want to go send it to sales for approval, so I'll send it to them. It'll say, are you sure? Because someone might, you should only do this when you're completed with all your data entry. We'll say yes. And then I can actually see a report, and my sales managers can come in here and see a report that says invoices not submitted, but invoices that are ready for approval. And now I can manage from this, and I've got one location for the sales reps to go through that's going to help them. So I'm really streamlining the process and forcing them down that path. The last part is once it's done, it can then be sent to accounting, because I have a button here at the bottom. It says submit to accounting, so it integrates into your accounting system. So so from the problem perspective, we've got the pricing, we've trying to coordinate sales and finance so they're together. We've done it by having the same amount of work but capture a larger level of detail. And so that brings us to what I hope to say is a sort of a closed loop. So we'll play from here. One, it removes that confusion on pricing because sales has put it in and finance knows that the deal is valid or is not valid. There's also workflow about deal level approvals so that reps can only put in certain deals. If they want to put a $100 deal in, it has to be approved by a manager. That lack of confusion allows claims to go through and integrated into the ERP so much easier. It allows us to get to analysis, and you'll see that in a second. But second, it allows for other planning to happen. So instead of it's always going into the spreadsheet and back and forth, and whether the spreadsheet gets back to home office, I don't know, but I can actually do the planning in Tradeparency. And of course, that leads to 3, some better decision making, and I'm going to show that right now. One of the key things in Tradeparency is, or in any kind of pricing, is that you're trying to figure out how much was going to be done on each particular deal level. So if I were to take California here, and I'm actually looking at the number of how much was spent on DAs and the quantity of DAs in a given time period, I can now go down to a brand or a brand varietal level. I might pick Zinfandel here, and I can see that by the glass is 49% of my business. Now, if that doesn't match what my grid would have said, if my grid might have said 30%, because as we're trying to come up with an estimated gross margin or spend per case and such like that, you might have underestimated. Now you actually have detail of what actually occurred. We also have stuff at list price here. Those are your unsupported cases. Those are cases that went out that, you know, if you had 1,890 depletions in that time period, how many of them were not supported? And so you can track that as well. And of course, you're hoping now to use that to say maybe we're spending too much by the glass, or maybe those are, you know, maybe 934 cases by the glass, but only 800 of them were on premise. Hey, they're maybe either taking advantage or there's a mistake in the process. So the goal is to give you that data on a daily basis, monthly basis, as opposed to waiting until the end of the year, and also speeds up the entire process. So problem solution, you can see some benefits, and I told you we're going to try to keep this to 15 minutes. So from here, I'm going to try to take a couple questions. I'm going to go over to the chat here if some people have put any in. Yep, there's at least one here. What about samples and other stuff? So we touched on that briefly, but samples and other stuff can be seen here as I create an invoice. And I'll get rid of this here. As I create an invoice, I'll go back into here, and I'm going to set it back to revise for a second. These other expenses, you can stick samples in here. You can have it by brand and varietal. If you're doing some kind of charity auction, you can have that as a category. All these categories can be set up and aligned to your GL structures because, again, it goes straight into your ERP system or your accounting system. So I hope that answers that question. Let's see here. Let's go back over here to the chat. And can management stop deals before we're spending against them? I'm assuming that you're in management. Yes, we have the ability to do that. So when we set up the system, we have an approval type. You can allow your sales managers or whoever would be divisional managers to put in certain levels of approval, whether it's as a % off of FOB or % off price to retailer, an absolute amount of DA or SPA, or how much a distributor can make. And so you can set those at different levels. Let's set it as a % off of FOB. And so then what happens is if you go to security and we go to new guy here, he does require approval, and then you would set it in here. I didn't reload the thing so that it didn't show up, but it would change because I changed the setting. So yes, and the key there, of course, is because you can then say, hey, you know what, I don't need to have management approve every single deal that goes through. Stuff below a certain threshold can just flow through, and it certainly does improve that streamlining and all that. So we have, wow, a lot more questions, and I am past 15 minutes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap this up real quick, and I'm going to throw up the last slide. We hope that you will check us out at tradeparency.com or give Nicole, who's our Director of Operations, a call. There's a really cool video right off of our website that kind of highlights this. So if you need to give management a quick preview, we'd love for you to do that. It's 3 minutes. And so thanks so much for your time and attention. I hope this was useful, and I would love to show you more. There's so many more details we could have gone into. Thank you.